The tree. When I was a child, there is a tree in our community which I and my friends frequented. This tree, Aridulus, is located inside an abandoned house. Every day we would sneak into the property and climb the tree. I had a nanny then who told us not to go there because the tree is home to unseen creatures. Being kids, we were frightened at first, but our curiosity won us over. One afternoon, it was a Good Friday. We went up to the tree and played there for a while when suddenly one of my friends fell from a branch that broke off. As soon as my friend hit the ground, the branches which I and my other friends were sitting on snapped, and we all fell to the ground. As you could tell, we were in a lot of pain, but we managed to get up and go home. Well, that's what I remember. What happened next was a retelling of what my mom and my friend's mom told us. After we reached our homes, we collapsed on the doorstep. My mom rushed to my side and checked on me. I had very high fever and I was in a very convulsive state. And I was continuously blabbering about someone who they did not know. My mom, being a nurse, she did not believe in superstition of sorts, so she took me to the hospital. That's when she discovered I have a big bluish bruise on my back. The doctor said it should be gone in a few days, but it did not. It was on my back for a week, and so as with my friends. After consulting with a medium, we found out that we were, as we called it, spanked by the spirit of the owner of the house who had been guarding the tree. It seems as though he wanted us to remember to heed the warnings of our elders. After making amends, the bruising on our backs disappeared. To this day, when there is a chance I and my old friends meet, we still go back to that time when the tree we frequented whooped our butts for being naughty kids. The Spirit in the Weeping Willow Tree. This story of mine takes place at my grandparents' 4 years ago. I will give you a little bit of background information. My family is very spiritual, and many of us have encountered spirits or some sort of entity. They believe that weeping willow trees are weeping due to spirits trapped inside. I was staying at my grandparents' house for the weekend when all of this happened. Like any other normal day, my grandparents were working outside on their flower beds, the gardens, etc. My grandfather was trying to trim the leaves of the willow tree because they had grown so long, it was starting to look funny. He got frustrated doing it and started cursing in French and calling the tree names. My grandmother was nearby and told him to stop trimming the leaves in such a way and to apologize because he was going to upset the spirits trapped inside the tree. Of course, he told her she was crazy and continued on the way he was. I know this all sounds crazy. That night, it was a full moon. Strange coincidence? Everyone was up chatting since my mom and sister were also over. All of a sudden, we heard this wailing. It was so loud and high-pitched. It almost sounded like a girl, but at the same time, an animal. The guard dog immediately started to cry and hide under the table, something he has never done before. Things started to get scary. Since it didn't stop for about 3 minutes, my grandfather picked up his gun and went out on the balcony to see what it was. Nothing was there. Then, we all came out and nobody could see anything. We could just hear the wailing circling the house as if the spirit was running around it, trying, and even with the big flashlight, we found nothing. What really frightened us was that my grandfather was always in the woods behind the property and where he lived. He was also a hunter and a man of the woods. He knew animals and their specific sounds. The two neighbors, they had even went outside in shock and couldn't see anything either. We went inside terrified. We all knew my grandfather had upset the spirits in the tree. The crying didn't stop for 2 hours. After it stopped, we all went to bed, but me and my sister couldn't sleep. We went home on Sunday, and nothing happened again until a month later on another full moon. The spirits came back around the same time for a few hours again. My grandmother told us that she was going to tell my grandfather to apologize to the tree or else it would happen again. He apologized, and nobody has ever experienced anything like this since. Has anyone heard of anything like this happening or experienced anything close to this? Tree giant. This story happened in the Philippines. It occurred in year 2012 during on one of my community outstretch activities with my students called Immersion. The students have to stay for 3 days and 2 nights in one community village with the host family assigned by the teacher and field coordinators. Host families were chosen by the village officials. I was the teacher. I had my own host family along with my assistant. In one of my immersions, we were assigned in a remote municipality known for NPAs, which are the New People's Army, considered as rebels by the government enemies. There were many stories already by the folks, and while we were preparing for a feeding activity in the multi-purpose hall, my students talked about the massacre years ago in the very same ground we were in. The massacre stories were told by their host families, but even though there were still NPAs out there, I assured them we were safe. There is a military camp on top of the hill. On the first night, I was patrolling with my assistant and 2 barangay officials, ensuring that all the students were already at home. Their curfew is at 10 p.m. So we were at the far end of the village when I saw a group of my students sitting on the wood under the tree and seemed like they were debating at something while looking at the camera. One of my students was holding this camera. I approached them and asked why they were still outside, but instead of answering my question, they all stared at me in horror. One female student spoke. "Ma'am, look at this," she said, handing me the camera. I saw a male student stolen shot. He's covering his face like he's being teased, but over his face was a face in form of a shadow. Round face, big eyes, big flat nose. The lips were not visible, but it's like it's hitting a cigarette. My assistant, Toots, and the 2 other officers also looked at the photo. It looked like a giant tree, or in Filipino language, kapre. Puzzled, I asked my student, "Did you edit this?" They all shook their heads. "No, ma'am. This was taken a few seconds before you arrived." Then, the officer said that the tree near them is really haunted, so they better go inside the house. They went to their respective houses, and we headed back to my host family's place. While walking, my assistant Toots told me that he feels someone is with us because of the goosebumps around his body. He suddenly feels cold and asked me to walk faster. I did as told, though I didn't feel anything different. When we entered the house, it stayed outside. We both had little sleep that night. I spent most of the time praying and holding the rosary.